Blood ties and broken laws, the saga of the James Younger Gang. The setting sun painted Missouri's western sky blood red, much like the trail of violence that followed the James Younger Gang across the American frontier. As dust devils danced across the prairie, they seemed to whisper tales of men who straddled the razor's edge between justice and vengeance, between Robin Hood heroics and cold-blooded murder. This is not just another story of outlaws and six-shooters, it's a tale that cuts deep into the wounded heart of post-Civil War America. The Seeds of Rebellion. Clay County, Missouri, 1847. The air was thick with the sweet scent of hemp fields and the bitter undercurrent of brewing conflict. Young Jesse James, barely out of short pants, watched his stepfather string up another rope of hemp, unaware that his own fate would soon become as twisted as those very fibers. Alongside his older brother Frank, Jesse was born into a world where the line between right and wrong was as muddy as the Missouri River after a spring storm. "Mama always said we was born fighting," Frank James would later recall, his weathered face creasing at the memory. "Reckon she was right about that, if nothing else." The James boy's father, Robert James, was a Baptist preacher who left for the California gold fields when Jesse was just 2 years old, only to die there of cholera, leaving his wife Zerelda to raise their children alone. She was a force of nature, standing tall as a Missouri oak, with a will as unbending as winter ice. Her subsequent marriage to Dr. Reuben Samuel would give the boys a stepfather, but it was the approaching storm of civil war that would truly shape their destinies. When the war came howling across Missouri like a prairie wolf, it didn't just divide the nation, it shredded the very fabric of civil society. The border war between Kansas and Missouri had already turned neighbor against neighbor, and the James brothers found themselves caught in its bloody undertow. Frank joined the Confederate guerrilla fighters known as bushwhackers at the tender age of 18, riding with the infamous William Quantrill. Jesse, too young to fight initially, watched Union militia torture his stepfather and terrorize his mother, planting seeds of hatred that would bloom into a lifetime of violence. The making of outlaws. "Ain't no such thing as a clean slate in this world," Cole Younger once drawled to a Kansas City Times reporter. "Every man's got his reasons, and every reason's got its price." The Younger brothers, Cole, Jim, John, and Bob, shared a similar path to outlawry. Their father, Henry Washington Younger, was a prosperous Jackson County judge and colonel in the Union Army. Despite his Union sympathies, he was murdered by Red Legs, radical Union guerrillas, in 1862. The killing of their father pushed the Younger boys toward the Confederate cause and eventually into the arms of the bushwhackers, where they would forge an unbreakable bond with the James brothers. When the Civil War ended in 1865, the men who would become the James Younger Gang found themselves in a world that had moved on without them. The skills they had honed during the war, riding hard, shooting straight, and living by their wits, were ill-suited for peaceful pursuits. These unreconstructed rebels saw the railroad companies and banks, many owned by Northern interests, as legitimate targets. The first taste of notoriety. February 13, 1866. The winter wind howled through the streets of Liberty, Missouri, as a group of masked men rode into town. The Clay County Savings Association was about to become the scene of the first daylight peacetime bank robbery in American history. When the smoke cleared, a cashier lay dead, and $60,000 in cash and bonds had vanished along with the mysterious riders. Though never conclusively proven, this robbery was widely attributed to the James Younger Gang, marking the beginning of a criminal enterprise that would span a decade and capture the imagination of a nation. The gang's methods were as bold as they were brutal. They would ride into town in broad daylight, guns blazing, faces masked, and disappear into the Missouri countryside like ghosts. "We never killed nobody that didn't need killing," Jesse James would later claim in a letter to the Kansas City Times. "And we never robbed nobody that didn't deserve robbing." The legend grows. The gang's exploits soon became the stuff of legend, aided by the skilled pen of John Newman Edwards, a Confederate veteran turned newspaper editor. Edwards painted Jesse James and his companions as noble outlaws, modern-day Robin Hoods fighting against Northern oppression and corporate greed. His florid prose turned train robberies into acts of political resistance and bank heists into righteous vengeance. The truth, as always, was more complex. While the gang did occasionally share their spoils with poor farmers, they were far from selfless heroes. Their robberies were carefully planned operations designed to maximize profit and minimize risk. They used the latest technology, including the telegraph and railroad timetables, to stay one step ahead of the law. The gang's most spectacular heist came on July 21, 1873, when they stopped the Rock Island train near Adair, Iowa. Using inside information, they knew the train was carrying a shipment of gold. What they didn't know was that the cargo had been delayed. The robbery still netted them $3,000, but it also marked a turning point. The railroad companies, tired of being victimized, hired the Pinkerton Detective Agency to hunt down the gang. The hunter and the hunted. Alan Pinkerton, the legendary detective, took personal charge of the investigation. His agents infiltrated communities, gathered intelligence, and slowly began to tighten the noose around the gang. But the Outlaws had powerful allies, sympathetic locals who saw them as defenders of the old Southern way of life, and corrupt officials who were happy to look the other way for a share of the spoils. The cat-and-mouse game between the Pinkertons and the gang reached its tragic climax on January 25, 1875. Pinkerton agents, attempting to capture Jesse James, threw an incendiary device into the family home. The explosion killed Jesse's young half-brother and severely injured his mother, costing her an arm. The attack backfired spectacularly, generating enormous public sympathy for the James family and turning many Missouri citizens decisively against the Pinkertons. The Northfield Raid and the beginning of the end. September 7, 1876. Northfield, Minnesota. The gang had ridden north, far from their usual hunting grounds, drawn by reports of a bank flush with mining money. What followed would become one of the most famous bank raids in American history, not for its success, but for its catastrophic failure. The citizens of Northfield, unlike the cowed townspeople of Missouri, fought back. In the ensuing gun battle, 2 gang members were killed, and the younger brothers were all severely wounded. Though Jesse and Frank James escaped, the younger brothers were captured, effectively ending the gang's glory days. Cole Younger, speaking from behind prison bars years later, reflected, "There ain't no future in the past, son. We learned that the hard way in Northfield." The final chapter. Jesse James returned to Missouri, attempting to rebuild the gang with recruits, but the magic was gone. On April 3, 1882, Robert Ford, a young gang member hoping to collect a reward, shot Jesse James in the back of the head while he was straightening a picture in his home. The killing of Jesse James marked the end of an era, though his brother Frank would survive to see the new century, eventually dying in 1915. Legacy and legend. The story of the James Younger Gang has become an integral part of American mythology, a complex tale that speaks to the nation's ongoing struggle with questions of justice, loyalty, and the price of progress. Their exploits have been celebrated in dime novels, movies, and television shows, often with more attention to drama than historical accuracy. Yet beneath the legend lies a darker truth about the cost of violence and the way war can poison the souls of young men. The gang's story is inextricably linked to the broader tragedy of the Civil War and its aftermath, a reminder that the wounds of conflict often take generations to heal. As Bob Younger wrote in his final prison letter, "We thought we was fighting a war long after the war was over. Maybe that was our biggest mistake." The cultural impact. The James Younger Gang's influence on American popular culture cannot be overstated. They helped create the archetypal image of the Western outlaw, bold, charismatic, and deadly. Their story has been retold countless times, each generation finding new meaning in their rebellion against authority and their ultimate fate. Their legacy can be seen in everything from the early Western films of the silent era to modern retellings that grapple with questions of morality and justice. The gang's exploits have inspired countless books, songs, and stories, contributing to the enduring mythology of the American West. Historical context and modern relevance. The story of the James Younger Gang remains relevant today, offering insights into how war and social upheaval can create conditions that breed violence and criminality. Their tale speaks to eternal themes of loyalty, betrayal, justice, and the complex relationship between society's outcasts and the communities that both fear and celebrate them. the economic conditions that contributed to their rise, the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few, the rapid expansion of corporate power, and the displacement of traditional ways of life, find echoes in modern concerns about inequality and social justice. Epilogue, the echo of hoofbeats. As the sun sets over the Missouri hills, where the James Younger gang once rode, their story continues to resonate. It reminds us that the line between hero and villain often depends on who tells the tale, and that violence, once unleashed, has consequences that echo through generations. In the end, perhaps Cole Younger said it best during his final prison interview, "We was just men, when all was said and done. Not heroes, not devils, just men trying to find our way in a world that had lost its bearings." Reckon that's all anyone can say for sure. The hoofbeats of the James Younger gang have long since faded into history, but their story remains, a complex tale of brotherhood, violence, and the price of revenge. It stands as a testament to a turbulent time in American history when the wounds of Civil War bred desperate men who chose to live and die by the gun. Their legacy serves as both a warning and a fascination, a reminder that the myths we create about our outlaws often say more about us than about them. In the end, the story of the James Younger gang is not just about bank robberies and gunfights, it's about the eternal struggle between justice and vengeance, between loyalty and law, between the world as it is and the world as we wish it to be. The end. Join the adventure with the Western Echoes, Cowboy Tales Unleashed. If you're loving our cowboy stories and captivating tales, don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button to stay updated on all our future posts. Saddle up and ride along with us.